seeing a person reading a book that I love is like having a book recommend a human to me.
Oh,
and I think that's kind of what book clubs do, because you suddenly realize, oh, I have a lot of best friends in this room because we related to the same things.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Season 5 of the Future Ready Librarian podcast series, Leading from the Library. This is a podcast for all librarians, wherever you are in your journey. It is filled with amazing guests, important topics, and engaging conversations that will inspire, engage, and support all of us as future ready librarians. I am your host, Shannon McClintock Miller. I am the district teacher librarian at Van Meter Community School in Van Meter, Iowa, and I serve as the Future Ready Librarian spokesperson. I have the pleasure of working within my librarian school community and also with others around the country and world through Future Ready Librarian events, conferences, consulting, writing, and more. I'm honored to bring these voices and the work of others to our podcast and to all of you. And today, I am so excited to welcome my dear friend, Jennifer LaGarde, to the show. So welcome,
Hey,
Jennifer.
Shannon. Hey.
I was so excited because Jennifer and I haven't seen each other for a while.
A long time.
I'm so happy to have you and just to catch up with, all things library.
I'm excited. It does feel like a long time. I feel like the last time I saw you face to face, Shannon, I know it was pre-pandemic. So it has been many years.
I know. I always think about, when I think about you, I think about when you came to Iowa.
Yes.
And Hagen was little, and now
Yes.
Hagen is a senior.
I
and
can't.
We're getting ready for college and all that.
I can't. I was thinking about that trip the other day. That was a fun trip to Iowa. That was a long, I want to say Hagen was like in the 5th grade. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, he was so little, and now he's like a giant.
He's a man. Oh my goodness. It's crazy. I don't understand because we both still look like we're in our 20s. We both still look so young. How can that be?
I have no idea how that happens. I love it.
I love it. I love it so much.
I love it too. Well, when Jennifer and I were brainstorming on what we were going to chat about today, something that comes to my mind when I think about Jennifer is her love of reading and a love of books. And I always love seeing what she posts about what she's reading and things that we should all read. And so we thought a great conversation about books would be completely appropriate today.
Plus, it'd just be fun. It's no stress, right? And it's been a great year for books. 2022, I feel like a lot of authors struggled with books coming out during the pandemic. And this year, it just feels like the floodgates are open. There's been so many awesome books that have been released this year. I'm real excited about it.
I know it's hard when I get on to like Tidal Wave or I go to the bookstore. It's just like this amazing overload of books that I want to get for our readers. And so it's been a good year. I was speaking to an author today. We had the author of the new Lola series from Capstone, and we had her Zooming with our kids. And to think about too, everything that's happened like during the pandemic where our authors had more time at home, or maybe they, switched their job, or they had kids, they work at home now. Like it's really been great too, to see that, because I think that's brought a surge of great books for us too.
Yeah. And I think just like us, they're excited to be back in the world and engaging with their readers and doing book launch events and all of those sorts of things, that we all had to put on pause for a few years.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So where should we start?
Anywhere you want. I feel like this year has been an exceptionally good year for middle grade books.
Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of my reading has been this year, because there's just been so many good books that have come out this year. Do you just want me to talk about them, or do you want me to
Yes.
list them, or what do you want me to do? You're going to
I'm
make a
getting
list?
I'm getting my pen out for one thing. But yeah, let's just
Okay.
tell us what you're reading. Tell
Okay.
us. Yeah.
So one book I'm really excited about that just came out is The Midnight Children by Dan Gemeinhart. And people might know Dan's work because he wrote The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise, which was really popular a few years back, which I liked. I liked that book, but I loved The Midnight Children, which is kind of a hard book to explain. I have a copy of it here somewhere. I was going to show you the cover, but that's like, I have to look for it. We won't do that. But it's a really neat book about this kid who's living in this town called Slaughterville, which is a bizarre town name until you realize that the whole town's industry revolves around like the meat packing industry and their slaughterhouse, right? And our protagonist's name is Ravi, and he wakes up one night. And Shannon, this is like a scene at the very beginning of the book, and it's what totally hooked me. Right, the book opens where Ravi wakes up, not because there is a noise. He's like startled awake, not because there's a noise or because he's afraid, but by a feeling. And that feeling is like overwhelming loneliness because Ravi doesn't have a single friend. He feels very different from his dad, who's like this big, strong worker at the slaughterhouse. And Ravi isn't into any of that, you know. And so he wakes up in the middle of the night feeling super lonely. He goes to his window, and as he's watching out the window, this truck drives up across the street and parks in front of this abandoned house that's across the street from him. And the driver gets out of the truck and sort of looks around, and when he sees nobody's there, he opens up the back, and several children get out of the back of the truck. And Robbie's just watching from his window, and they all start to go up into the house until one of the girls turns around, looks directly at Robbie in the window, and goes,
"Oh,"
like that. I know, right? And the rest of the book is really about the secrets that not only these kids have, but that Ravi has and that the whole town has, and how they kind of have to learn to trust one another in order to deal with those secrets. It's like beautifully written. It's got this mystery in it, and it's like perfect for grades, say 4 through 7. I just love it.
Oh, I can't even wait. I might have to go to the bookstore after this.
Yeah. People always tell me that I cost them money, so I'm sorry about that because every time I see somebody, I have some book to share, and that's just what it is. But
yeah,
that's a middle grade book that I'm really excited about. I'm also really excited about a book that came out earlier this year called The Lucky Ones by Linda Williams Jackson. And that book, I feel like, hasn't gotten enough buzz, but I really want it to. I really want people to pick up this book. It takes place during the civil rights movement era in the Mississippi Delta, and it's not based on Linda Williams Jackson's real experiences there, but she grew up during that time in the Mississippi Delta too. And so even though it's not autobiographical, her experiences really shaped and formed the story. But it's about a kid named Ellis Earl who lives with his 8 siblings, his 2 cousins, and his mom in this one room. It's hard to describe it as anything other than really a shack, but his house is one room in Mississippi. He goes to a segregated school that he can't get to on days when it rains because the road washes out. So he has this wonderful teacher who will like come and pick him up and pick up other of his classmates and take him to school. And his teacher, Mr. Foster, is not only a super inspiration to Ellis Earl, but he's also really hard on him. He just refuses to let Ellis Earl slack off or think about dropping out of school. Ellis Earl is in, I want to say the 5th grade, but in the 7th grade is when all of his family members, including his mom, have dropped out of school in order to get work. And Ellis Earl can sort of feel the countdown, like he's only got 2 more grades of school left, but his teacher just won't allow that to happen. But the book kind of revolves around the visiting of Robert Kennedy to the Mississippi Delta during that time. Mm-hmm. And it's based on some real events that took place then. And so kids learn a whole lot about that time in history. I learned a whole lot about that time in history, and I am not a kid, you know, but it's really well written. Ellis Earl is so sweet and lovable. I wish more people would pick up this book. I feel like it's a really timely story for right now, too, in our world, even though it takes place, gosh, many, many moons ago. So that's called The Lucky Ones.
And the cover of that book is beautiful.
It is so cute, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know. With Ellis Earl on the front and all the things that he's thinking about. The other thing I love about that book, too, is that there's 2 author's notes at the end.
Oh, yep.
And I think those are really add to the story because you learn so much about all the choices that Linda Williams Jackson made when she was writing the book. And to me, that makes them even more meaningful. You're like, oh, wow, that's like, it's powerful when you learn what the author was thinking when they did stuff. So I really loved it.
So good. I have that, but I haven't read it yet. But I just got that for our library. And so I'm going to put that one out at the top of my list.
It's really sweet.
Anything else for middle school?
Yes, a lot for middle school. Have you read, oh gosh, I've got to think about the author for just a second. You may have to help me remember the author, but did you read Hummingbird? I believe the last name is Lloyd, but I can't remember the author's first name. I'm gonna look and see.
I got from the publisher. It's circulating around to my teachers.
Yes.
And I am on the list. I always do that, give away my ARCs, and then I'm like, okay, I'm ready to read it. And so was that so good?
Okay, so I am, at full disclosure, I'm like I'm about, I'm going to say 50 chapters from the end. So not 50 chapters, 50 pages, from the end. And so but I'm reading it right now. And it's one of those books now where I'm trying to find time to, like, I have a print copy, but then I bought it in audio too, because I wanted to be able to read it when I couldn't sit down and read, you know, to listen to it while I'm cooking dinner or whatever. So I think that speaks to how good it is. But it is, for those folks who don't know it, about it, it's a young girl. It's about a young girl named Olive, who lives in a remote town in the Appalachian Mountains in Tennessee. And she is going to, even though she's in the 6th grade, she's going to public school for the very first time because she has a disability that affects her bones. And she refers to it as OI. I can't remember the long name of it, but basically her bones are like, almost, she describes them as almost being like lace. They're very hot, they're hollow pretty much. And so they break super, super easy. And so as a result, her mom has wanted her to stay home and be homeschooled. All of her life, is very hesitant to send her to public school because she's very afraid that something will happen to Olive. So Olive convinces her mom to send her to public school. And on the day she convinces her, some other sort of magical things seem to be happening in her town that reawakens her town's interest in an old legend about the supposedly magic hummingbird that only appears only so many years. But if you find it, if you are the person to find the hummingbird, it will grant you a wish. Now, Olive has never, ever wished for her bones to be different because she's a complete person who has a very loving family, who is happy. And honestly, she's one of the most vivacious characters I've ever read in literature. She's just such a bright, vibrant personality. So when she starts thinking about the hummingbird, she starts thinking about other wishes. Like she wants the lead in the school play, for example, right? But then when she goes to try out, there's no ramp for her to get onto the stage. Then she decides she wants something else, but there's some other obstacle. With every wish, there's an obstacle related to her disability. And that sort of causes her to think, gosh, is the thing I really want to have normal bones? And that's a real conflict for her, because she's spent her whole life being told and believing that there's nothing wrong with her whatsoever. She's just different, but that difference isn't bad. And then to suddenly want that to change feels really wrong to her. So this struggle of, would my life really be better, etc. So again, not quite to the end, but I'm anxiously awaiting to get there. And so far, I'm really liking it a lot.
Oh, I can't wait to read that. I have this basket in my library where I put a lot of my advanced reader copies, and I put that in there and it was snatched up. So, and I have it on my tidal wave list. It's coming soon. So
I feel so wrong. I feel like a really bad librarian for not knowing the author. So I'm going to have to look that up while we talk, because I want to make sure I get that right. Hummingbird, and it's by Lloyd. But what was real, Natalie Lloyd. Okay. I wanted to bring that up because Natalie Lloyd actually has the same disability as her character Olive.
oh, wow.
So she grew up, maybe not experiencing a magic hummingbird, but experiencing a number of the things that Olive has faced and experienced, because she has this same bone disease. And every year, I don't know about you, Shannon, but I get real excited come January for the Youth Media Awards, right? And of course, we all know the Caldecott and the Newbery, et cetera. But one of the awards I think about a lot is the Schneider Family Book Award, because it's the one that honors books that feature the disability experience. And every year I'm always struggling to find books that might even be considered for that award. And many years when they announce the winners, I've never even heard of them. So I'm always I think I have an eye for books that feature that experience, because that representation is just, we have a lot of work to do still to getting that representation out there, so that kids who have physical differences that affect the way they live can see themselves represented in a book. So when I find a book like Hummingbird, I get really excited.
Well, and I love it because we were just talking about our fourth graders. They always read El Defo, and the kids love it. I mean, and they then kind of get hooked on, I think it just makes kids, when they read books and they get hooked on that, so much more compassionate too about others. And so that one would be a very good read aloud to do with.
Absolutely. And the chapters, when I think about read alouds too, the chapters are short, and a lot of times they sort of hinge on sort of a cliffhanger, because you're like, oh, what's going to happen next? And I could just see my middle schoolers just starting an absolute riot when I closed the book, because they'd want you to keep reading more, because they would be like, no, it ends in that sort of way. Exactly. Plus, a lot of my work now revolves around helping librarians find a really meaningful way to integrate SEL into their practice. And what better way than with books, like you said, in terms of helping kids develop empathy and compassion for others.
Yes, I love that. How about picture books?
Oh gosh, it's been a good year for picture books too. One picture book that just came out that just about a month ago, maybe now, is from my friend Corinna Lucan, who wrote or who illustrated My Heart and The Tree and Me. And her illustrations are really easy to recognize when you see a Corinna Lucan book, But this one is a collaboration with Matt de la Pena, and is called Patchwork. And I don't know if you've seen it yet, but gosh, it's so pretty. It's so gorgeous. Just this lovely book about how our kids are not just one thing. And adults aren't either. A lot of times we want to put people in categories. You're this, or you're this. but
Yes.
really we're lots of things, like a quilt, like a patchwork. And it's done in a really beautiful way. I love that one a lot.
Oh, yeah. I saw that. I haven't received that yet, but I saw it in an email, like a sneak peek publisher. I
Mhm.
remember I love quilts, and so that one stood out to
It's
me.
really beautiful. I love the colors in it too. The color palette is really, it's very soft and pastel-y. It's really beautifully done.
Yes,
Um,
great illustrators out there.
I know. Speaking of which, let's see here. Another picture book. I'm doing this all from memory right now. That came out this year that I really love. It's called Gibberish. Have you seen this one?
Yes, love that.
Yes. And I can't remember the author. I'm such a terrible librarian. Shannon's gonna look that up. It's Bo. I know the but Gibberish, which to me, okay. So do you remember the illustrated novel called Pie in the Sky by Remy Lay that came out a few
Yes,
years ago?
yes.
I keep thinking about a book pairing between Gibberish and Pie in the Sky because
Yeah.
both of them do this great job of visually showing us what it feels like for someone to be new to a country and not speak the language yet, or to still be learning the language. And
Yeah.
how they show in these visual metaphors, both books, what that feels like to feel isolated, or even though there might be many, many people around you, to feel completely alone because you maybe are only able to pick out one word here or there on
Yeah,
what's coming. I thought that one was really well
that's
done, and I
a
keep thinking about
perfect
those two
one.
books. Yeah,
Young Vo is
that's
the
it. Thank you
yes,
so much,
yes.
Shannon. I love that you're looking up all the
I
stuff
am.
for me.
I'm just looking it up and making a list too, even though I can listen.
I know. Of course, our friend John Shu came out with his
Yes,
first picture book this year. This is
love
a
it.
school. I feel
And
like we'd be wrong if we didn't mention it.
and I love it so
Me
much.
too. Me
That
too.
was in our book bags. I do this thing where we rotate the books around to the classrooms, or you've been
Mhm.
booked, and that kicked
Yes.
our year off. It
What a
is a
perfect.
wonderful book.
Yes, I love it. And I'm a former middle and high school English teacher. And so I get real nerded out about the poetry in a picture book. And so sometimes I'll write it all out, like because I want to see like how it would look like as a poem. And so I think about that book a lot. As a middle school English teacher, I would have used it a lot to have kids think about commas. I know it's such a nerdy thing, but that book, I think John's use of commas in that book is like gives my English teacher heart, like makes it skip a beat. I just love it. Beyond just the wonderful story and the way it helps us see school as a community that is better when we all work together and care about each other, etc.
It's
I
beautiful.
love it.
And I love, again, the illustrations are just
Yeah.
so dear. Yeah. That
Veronica Miller Jameson, she did a great job.
she did. And the kids, I think, again, like they had so much fun really looking at all the things going on. And it's one that you can
Yes.
look at over and over again and find new things,
Yeah,
which I love,
exactly. I
which
love that too.
I know. And how about high school? Any that stick
Oh
out?
gosh, yes. Okay, so one book that I'm really excited about right now is called The Summer of Bitter and Sweet, and it's by Jen Ferguson. And it's one that I've had around my house for a very long time, but just didn't pick it up until my book club chose it, right? And then I was like, oh, I guess I better look at this. Um, but it is about a young girl who is getting ready to graduate from high school. It's her senior year. And she's got sort of a conflict about what she's going to do after high school. But the story really revolves around, because she's she's a girl of Indigenous heritage, and the story takes place in Canada, but she lives in a town where she experiences a great deal of harassment and bullying and discrimination based on the fact that she is Indigenous. People who come from an Indigenous background in her town are treated sort of like second-class citizens in comparison to the white people. And everything that happens to her in the year building up to her graduation sort of is affected by the fact that she is from an Indigenous culture. What makes this story kind of unique is that she can pass as white. She has her father, who is not in the picture until about a third of the way in the book, has been absent from her life because he was in prison. When he is released, he's a white man. And because she can pass as white, she's got this conflict about whether or not she should use that to her advantage and not have to face all the stuff that she faces in her culture, or she should own her heritage and fight against what is happening in her community. The wrinkle of her father being released adds a lot of like suspense and drama to the story. I will say that I want to always put like the sort of or content warning with that book, because there's some harassment that she experiences that's kind of tough to read. And so even though it's definitely for a high school audience, for more sensitive readers, that might be one that you'd want to just have a conversation with them about and say, you know, there's some tough stuff in this book. And if any of it bothers you, let's chat about it. Let's talk about it. Or if you don't think that's right for you, let's pick a different one.
Yeah, that sounds really good though. And you read it for a book club. Yeah,
I did. I read it for my book club. I had it, but you know, things get prioritized and I just didn't pick it up, but I was so glad I did. I'm so glad my book club said, hey, you got to read this. So I did.
So good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know. I was just upstairs with our high school English teacher today, chatting books and getting ready for our book clubs. And, you know, now we're like 6 weeks into school. And so things are really kicking off. And there's nothing better than book clubs for kids. Today I did 3rd grade and I did 5th grade. And I just love them.
Me too. I've been doing these book clubs for Bookalicious, these like middle grade book clubs. They're free and they're just for anybody, teachers, librarians who want to come and talk about a book. And it is such a heart-filling activity. Like it just like with the kids, it just fills your bucket because there's no stress. It's just about book joy and about finding the things that we have in common. A lot of times that's what books do for us. They allow us to find new friends, right? You know,
yes.
There's a meme, maybe you've seen it, Shannon, but it's one of those e-cards. And it essentially says on the top, you know, seeing a person reading a book that I love is like having a book recommend a human to me.
Oh,
and I think that's kind of what book clubs do, you know, because you suddenly realize, oh, I have a lot of best friends in this room because we related to the same things, you know, in the book. And that's kind of fun to me.
I love that. I know book clubs this time of year is my favorite because they all start and just meeting. And I love that part of when the teachers ask me what I do book clubs to within the day. I'm like, yes, that's what I love.
Sign me up.
And so I love that. I know. Too. Oh, this has been so fun.
Me too. I mean, I agree. I love talking about books and I would do it anytime. So don't hesitate to invite me.
I love it. Well, and I know that if people follow you online, they'll be able to see more of what you love. So tell everyone where they can find you too.
Sure. So I'm in all the regular places. You know, I'm on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. I mostly lurk on TikTok, but I am there. On Twitter, I'm just at Jennifer LaGarde. On Instagram, it's at Jen LaGarde because someone else stole my name. And on TikTok, it's the same thing. It's at Jennifer & LaGarde because someone else got Jennifer LaGarde first. I didn't think my name was that common, but there you go, right? So, I should like to share book recommendations at least once a week. I get excited about what I'm reading. Plus, I teach a young adult literature class for Rutgers, and I love to, you know, I share books online to model what that can look like for pre-service librarians, that they can use their social media feeds to share book recommendations.
I love that. Oh, that's so great. Well, I'm so
Yay.
glad that you joined me today. And now I have, my list right here of books.
And yay!
So much fun. But thank you so much for joining us today. And we appreciate everything that you shared. You'll be able to find Jennifer's information also attached to this podcast, along with resources and a certificate of professional development you can download and fill out to use. As always, thank you to all of our listeners for joining us for this episode of the Future Ready Librarian Podcast Series, Leading from the Library. And a very special thank you to our sponsors, Follett. You make a difference in our libraries, schools, and within our lives, and that of our students every day. We appreciate everything that you do. I hope you can take what you learned in today's podcast. I know you'll be able to make your book list and put it to use within your practice as a future-ready librarian. Until next time, friends, keep finding ways to lead within and from your library.